Tanner Horner says he didn't sexually assault and kill Athena Strand. His alter ego Zero did. A CSI testified she had to collect 6 panels of flooring from Tanner Horner's FedEx truck as evidence because the floor's print pattern was embedded in Athena's face. The jury heard the horrific details of Athena telling Horner she was going to tell her daddy what he had done, which Horner claims is what caused him to panic, so he tried to break her neck but was unable to do so. Athena started crying, and the last thing Horner told her was that he would take her to the hospital before telling her to turn around and strangling her. And how does the prosecution know exactly what happened? Because Horner was being recorded by his FedEx van. Initially, both video and audio were recorded, but the CSI agent testified Horner took a FedEx sticker and placed it over the camera so only the audio could then be heard. I truly hope the jurors, judge, detectives, family, frankly, anyone sitting in the courtroom today won't be traumatized by the testimony they heard for the rest of their lives.
A prison officer from Birmingham has been sent to prison herself for having an intimate relationship with a prisoner. Jania Begum is 25 years old. She'd been working in HMP Birmingham since 2018. Now, the prison is Category B, which means that the prisoners aren't considered as dangerous as in a Category A prison, but they are still held to quite high security standards. At first, she was a respectable member of staff, until she began having an S relationship with an inmate in 2022. This was Joshua Mullings. Now, fellow prison officers had actually heard rumors and started to get suspicious about the pair's relationship. They knew that they needed hard evidence in order to do something about this. They therefore installed small security cameras into cupboards. Now, this actually did enable them to catch the pair engaging in S activity. On the 3rd of October 2022, she was arrested. Although she did express remorse for her actions, she was given a 16-month prison sentence herself.
How do you go missing after getting out of a taxi one night and then end up dead in the water tank of a motel 13 days later with severe trauma to your body and signs of SA, all accidentally with no foul play? Because that's what the police are saying happened to her, and I am not buying it. This is the mysterious death of Debani Escobar, and nothing has disturbed me more than this last photo of her. Debani was an 18-year-old law student who disappeared on April 8th, 2022. That night, Debani went to a party with 2 of her friends at the Quinta Diamante estate in General Escobedo, Mexico. As the night went on, her behavior became more and more erratic, which was not like her. And at one point, she got into a fight with one of her friends and ended up locking herself inside the men's bathroom. What that fight was about is unknown, but her friends reportedly wanted to leave without her because of it. But before doing so, they called her a DD driver to pick her up from the party and take her home. A DD driver is like an Uber driver, and so the driver, who was a man, picked her up at 4:17 a.m. At some point during the drive, the two were seen on nearby security footage arguing in the car, and according to the driver, he said it was because he was trying to ask Debani for her address and a guardian's phone number, but she refused to give it to him. The driver then says that Debani groped him, and these are just the words coming from his mouth. But according to Debani's dad, the security footage that was obtained actually shows the driver inappropriately touching Debani. After this altercation, Debani got out of the car right there on Highway 85 in Monterey, and this is reportedly an extremely dangerous stretch of road where many people have gone missing before. The driver then took this final photo of Debani alone, standing on the desolate highway in the middle of the night. He then texted this photo to the friend that scheduled this ride for Debani. I'm assuming that he did this because he wanted to explain the situation and let her know that Debani got out of the car. After waiting for several minutes to see if Debani would get back in, he drove off, leaving her alone. About 5 minutes later, Debani was seen on security footage walking to the Alcosa Transportation Offices, which is a trucking company in the Nueva Castilla neighborhood. But because it was so early, nobody was there to help her, so she walked away. Not long after this, Debani is seen on security footage again, arriving at the Nueva Castilla motel alone. This is a really almost run-down motel on the side of the road, and it looks pretty desolate. The last time Debani was seen alive was when she was caught on security footage looking through a restaurant's window, and that restaurant looks attached to the motel, but I could be wrong. It also kind of looks abandoned. After this, Debani disappeared, and what followed has never been explained. The next day, her dad reported her missing to the state attorney general's office, and a massive search for her began. And when I say massive, I mean hundreds of police officers and volunteers using drones and tracking dogs. The last photo that the driver took of Debani then went viral on social media, and this is what sparked the public outcry over her disappearance. So of course the driver was interviewed, but I guess authorities believed what he had to say because he was never arrested or charged with anything. The location of this photo was shared with police, and it was smack dab in the center of the 3 locations surrounding her disappearance and where she was last seen on security footage. Those locations were the house party to where she got out of the car, and then finally to the Nueva Castilla motel where she was last seen. So police searched the motel extensively, 4 times to be exact, but Debani was nowhere to be found. But then, 13 days later, a gruesome discovery would be made. One of the motel employees began noticing a foul smell coming from one of the water tanks, and it continuously got worse. So when they went to investigate, they opened the water tank and found a decomposing body. So needless to say, police were called, and the body was discovered to be Debani's, but she was so decomposed at this point that the only way they could tell it was her was by the necklace that she was wearing. They then found her purse in the next water tank and her phone and keys in the third. This is incredibly sad because this was only a block and a half away from the trucking company where she tried to get help. According to the government's autopsy, they said that Debani fell into the underground 12-foot water tank, hit her head, and drowned, and that this was all just a tragic accident with no foul play involved. But Debani's dad didn't trust this, and he had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And this was mainly because the police had already searched the motel's property 4 times before she was found. He thought that something was trying to be covered up, so he had a second independent autopsy done, and the findings are bizarre. This autopsy found that Debani had been sexually assaulted and physically abused before she died, and the official cause of death was from a deep cranial contusion. So because of these findings, there were many rallies and protests in Mexico that called for a more thorough investigation into Debani's death. One thing that would have helped tremendously in the beginning while searching for Debani was security footage from inside the motel, but the manager of the motel, along with one of the front desk employees, claimed that there was no security footage to be given. They said the motel does have cameras, but that they don't record and are strictly for monitoring purposes. But suddenly, out of nowhere, hours of video footage emerged that shed some light into what happened the night Debani disappeared. Video footage from the motel showed Debani entering the property that night alone, but instead of going to the front desk, she went to a garden out of sight. About 20 minutes later, she's seen walking by the motel's empty pool and towards the water tank, and that was the last time she was ever seen alive. Because of how shady everything seemed, a third autopsy was conducted that required Debani be exhumed, and surprisingly, the results were more grave than before. This final autopsy showed that Debani actually died from asphyxiation. She had been strangled, and absolutely no water was found in her lungs. Her body showed extreme signs of violence, and the results also showed that she died between 3 and 5 days before she was found, meaning that she was alive for possibly up to 10 days before dying, which leads me to ask, where was she during that time? So many aspects of this case are still unexplained. First off, with her behavior being erratic the night she went missing, it seems likely that she could have possibly been drugged. And why was the first official government autopsy so wrong? Was it due to incompetence or corruption? Because of how fast they pushed that this was an accident, many people, including Debani's family, feel like this was a cover-up. Her family believes that her body was somehow planted in the water tank because there is a ton of evidence that this was no accident. Some people suspect the driver because after one of Debani's friends called to pick her up, he mysteriously turned off his driving app. Some believe that the motel is responsible because they lied about the security footage. And in fact, both of those employees were actually accused of making false declarations and concealing evidence, which is a weird thing to do if you're innocent. There is a possibility that somebody followed her into the motel from the trucking company that she stopped at, or even one of the guests at the motel. But unfortunately, since the video footage was withheld and everything around that being so sketchy, I don't trust that it wasn't tampered with in some way. What's crazy is the fact that while searching for Debani, 5 other missing young girls were found in the process. But as of today, no one has ever been arrested in connection to her case. It's now been 2 years, and Debani's death is still unexplained and unsolved, and how she ended up in the water tank that night remains a mystery. I can guarantee you that nothing will make you lose more sleep than when you look into how many people go missing after crashing their car, how they seemingly vanish into thin air, sometimes within just minutes. That's what happened to Jason Landry, and his story never fails to keep me up at night. Jason Landry was a 21-year-old student at Texas State University when he mysteriously disappeared on December 13th, 2020. What's scary to me is the fact that almost all of his movements that night were traced from his phone records, but he somehow vanished within 67 minutes in an area that he wasn't supposed to be in. That night, Jason left his apartment in San Marcos, Texas to go back home for Christmas. He left his apartment at 10:55 p.m., and his plan was to drive to his hometown of Missouri City, Texas, where all of his family members were waiting for him for the holidays. It should have only been about a 2.5-hour drive, but Jason never showed up, and what happened after this has never been explained. Instead, his dad was was woken up at 2 in the morning by a phone call, and on the other end was a highway patrol officer who told him that his son's car was just found wrecked and abandoned along a gravel road in Luling, Texas. This immediately stood out as odd to Jason's dad because Luling was in the complete opposite direction from where he was supposed to be heading. A volunteer firefighter had reportedly found Jason's car 31 minutes after midnight, so not long after he left his apartment that night. It was abandoned near the 2700 block of Salt Flat Road, and just from looking at the pictures, it seemed pretty desolate, and it's definitely pretty far off from the highway where he was supposed to be. It looked as if Jason had been in a single car crash, and from what authorities can piece together, it looked like he possibly overcorrected on the gravel road and then spun out of control, eventually hitting a few trees and a barbed wire fence. The front passenger door was locked, the keys were still in the ignition, and the headlights were on. But then the officer tells him that Jason is nowhere to be found, which is especially concerning because he had very obviously been in a car wreck in an area that he didn't know. So his dad immediately drove to the crash site and was stunned to find nobody there. Not a single police officer was looking for his son, but his dad walked into an incredibly eerie scene. About 900 feet from where his wrecked car was found were Jason's clothes, strewn across the desolate gravel road. I'm talking about all of the clothes he was wearing at the time of the crash. So his shirt, shorts, socks, underwear, and even his shoes. Some of his clothes had small drops of blood on them, and his watch was also found on the road. What's absolutely crazy to me though is the fact that authorities didn't process the scene as a crime. So after Jason's car was found, they didn't search it. Instead, they had it towed to an impound lot. But Jason's dad knew that the clothes surrounding the crash site did belong to Jason because he liked to wear really bright colored socks. And the socks that were laying in the road were bright yellow SpongeBob socks. The temperature was near freezing the night Jason crashed his car, and now with him being missing and not getting a hold of his family, his dad knew something was horribly wrong. And because the crash site wasn't listed as a crime scene, nothing had been taken in as evidence. So Jason's dad had to actually collect all of his son's items as evidence and bring them into the police station himself. This is when he said, "Hey, you know my son is missing. Why isn't anyone out looking for him?" And this is kind of what got the ball rolling because at first it really seemed like the police couldn't be bothered. So then Jason's dad was taken to his car, and when he looked inside, he found Jason's phone stuck between the driver's seat and the center console. Eventually, a formal search did happen, and this is when more of Jason's belongings were found. About 900 feet in the opposite direction of where his clothes were found, police found Jason's backpack, which contained his laptop, gaming equipment, and a small amount of WEED. Also found in this area was a plastic bag with some of Jason's toiletries in it, as well as his tumbler with his pet fish in it. But sadly, at this point, they were all dead. It was at this point that the gravity of the situation kind of set in for authorities, and a massive search for Jason was launched. They searched in the nearby woods and farmlands and in every abandoned house and shed for miles. They brought in tracking dogs, horses, and drones, and they searched for months, but absolutely no trace of Jason was ever found. It was like Jason vanished into thin air. So then authorities started combing through his phone records to see what they could find. And what's crazy is that almost all of his movements the night he went missing were recorded because he used the Waze app. So the timeline of his last movements were thankfully captured, but it really only brings more questions. Phone records show Jason leaving his apartment in San Marcos at 10:55 p.m. He then begins driving on Highway 80, and at 11:05 p.m. he goes under I-35 in San Marcos and continues south. At 11:21 p.m. he enters Stairtown, Texas, and just a few minutes later he enters the city of Luling. Continuing on Highway 80, he goes through the intersection of Hackberry Street, and this is where Highway 80 becomes Austin Street. At this point, Jason stops using the Waze app and opens Snapchat, which shows him continuing on Austin Street to the intersection with Magnolia Avenue. He goes through the intersection and continues on Austin Street, but after this, his digital footprint just stops. Police believe that he ends up driving on Spruce Street, which eventually turns into Salt Flat Road, where his car would be found wrecked and abandoned. What happened after this? Nobody knows. Jason's phone was still on and still had a signal when he crashed his car, but for some reason it didn't capture any of his very last moments. From the time his digital footprint stops to when his car was discovered wrecked was 67 minutes. And to this day, the biggest mystery is what happened in those 67 minutes. We know he crashed his car somehow, but police believe that no one else was involved in the crash, and they say they found no evidence that he was kidnapped or harmed in any way. The Caldwell County Sheriff's Office stated that there's no evidence a crime even happened. No blood was found inside of Jason's car, and the drops of blood found on his clothes were small enough to suggest that he didn't suffer a serious injury in the crash. Authorities have reviewed hundreds of hours of video footage from all over Luling from the minute he crashed his car to weeks after the fact, but nothing was ever found. Jason didn't appear in any of the footage. Police found no evidence to suggest that he was planning to meet someone in Luling, so the question remains on why he was there in the first place on a specific remote gravel road and so far off the highway. With no evidence of what happened to Jason, his case police soon felt cold. Then, Texas Search and Rescue started working on the case to try and find Jason. They used AI and nearly a year's worth of drone images to search 6 points of interest. These were 6 places where computers/technology thought Jason could be out there in the field near where he crashed his car that night. During their search, they did find a lot of bones, but none of them turned out to be human, and again, absolutely no trace of Jason was found. Then in 2022, Jason's case would gain momentum again when a man who eerily resembled him was found unconscious in New York, over 1,700 miles away. This gave his family some hope that Jason was finally found, but unfortunately, the man was not Jason. He was a resident of Yonkers in New York who just so happened to also be missing, and it's sad because he really did look so much like Jason. Authorities have done forensic testing, have issued a bunch of search warrants, and have taken numerous witness testimonies, but no trace of Jason has ever been found, and there are no leads or any evidence in this case. Additionally, multiple private investigators have also worked on this case, but no suspects or any persons of interest have been found. Police believe that he's either somewhere still out there near Salt Flat Road or someone else was involved, even though they can't find any evidence of that. They urge anyone who lives in the area who might have any cameras on private property to still send it in. Or if you live on private property out there that has never been searched, please consider letting authorities search it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are so many cases like this where people, especially young men, crash their car and then mysteriously disappear. It really does need to be studied because it is terrifying. It's now been 4 years, and whatever happened that night causing Jason to crash his car and then disappear remains a mystery. There's a $20,000 reward for information leading to his whereabouts. These are some of his characteristics, and if you have any information, please contact the number on the screen.
If you're not already scared of dating apps, you might be. After today's video, we're going to be talking about Grace Mullane. This was in New Zealand in 2018. This was actually a request from one of you guys, which is crazy. I kind of forget that TikTok is like all over the world, and I have people commenting from New Zealand, from Australia, from the UK, which is so awesome. There's a lot of talk of SA and violent abuse throughout this, so if you don't think that that is good for your mental health, please don't watch it. I'll try and make a video one of these days without the mention of that, but unfortunately that is mentioned in so many of these cases. So this happens in New Zealand, but Grace is actually from England. She lived there with her mom, dad, and 2 brothers. She had just graduated in 2018 and decided she wanted to go off and travel the world, so she went off on a backpacking trip from October all the way to June. She started off in Peru, I believe, and I'm pretty sure New Zealand was the final stop. So she would contact her family every single day, sending different pictures of things she was doing, things she was seeing. They knew everywhere she was going. So November 30th, she landed in, I believe it's pronounced Auckland. I'm sorry, guys, this might come as a shock to you. English is not my first language. Sometimes I do have an accent, sometimes I don't. Don't yell at me, I'm trying my best. But she arrives in Auckland and she is staying at a hostel. Prior to checking into the hostel, she had been island hopping around New Zealand, but she decides to check in the hostel. She's going to chill out for a few days, decides to download Tinder, and this is when she matches with a guy named Jesse Kempson. The next day, Jesse asks Grace if she would want to meet up. She isn't super into it at first, but then she agrees to go and get drinks at a place called Sky City. December 1st is the day of their date. So they go out to get dinner and drinks. December 2nd was her 22nd birthday. So the morning after, her family and her friends, everyone's reaching out to her, happy birthday wishes. She's not responding. The time difference between the US and New Zealand is a big one, so they're not getting very concerned yet. They figured she's out doing something fun and she'll respond later. However, December 3rd comes and there's still silence. December 4th is when her family officially reported her as missing to the city of Auckland. So Grace is now officially missing. December 7th, her dad flies out to New Zealand and he starts helping the police with the investigation. They're looking at the cameras from her hostel. They see that she left the night of December 1st to go out on her date, but she never returned. So they start looking into her social media and they see that the night she went missing, she posted a selfie. A guy commented and said, "Beautiful, very radiant," which weird timing because then she was never seen again. But they see his name, it's Jesse. They decide, oh, he's probably friends with her. It's probably some guy that she met here. Let's call him up and see if he knows anything. They leave a voicemail for Jesse. Jesse calls back the next day, says that he does know her, that they did go on a date, and later that day he comes in for questioning. He's very helpful, very respectful, doesn't seem panicked at all, just sits there and is happy to help police and answer any questions they have. He's being questioned. He tells police they matched on Tinder, they went on a date, went out to this burger place, and he says that they He specifically chose that place because it's a very public area and he didn't know if he was going to get catfished or not. Which, when you know what he did and when you know what information he was holding and all the things that he knew that he did while he's sitting there saying that he didn't want to get catfished, is gross. Anyway, the date was awesome. They were having a lot of fun. Grace actually texted one of her friends while she was on the date and said, I click with him so well. And she's very excited about this guy, obviously. And the friend texts her back. Grace says, I'll tell you how it goes tomorrow. Jesse then tells the police that around 9:40 p.m., the date ended. They ended the night with a kiss, a nice to meet you, a kiss on the cheek, not in the mouth. Nice to meet you. And then he ended up going to a different bar, getting drinks by himself, and then went back to the hotel, got drinks at the hotel bar, and went to bed. He says he woke up around 9-10 in the morning the next day, very hungover, and police are like, all right, I mean, we don't have anything to disprove his story, so I guess he must be telling the truth. So up until then, Jesse had been very honest, very put together, nothing suspicious, until the police ask him if he's willing to take a lie detector test. And he says, am I being arrested for something I didn't do? Kind of a weird reaction, Mr. Jesse. I keep saying hotel because he lived at a hotel. Later on, closer to the trial, it comes out that he was just a big fat liar about random things that didn't matter, about his job, about his siblings' jobs, about his family, about where he lived. He apparently also was obsessed with dating apps. He would meet up with girls all the time and lie to them about everything. He even told a girl that he had cancer one time. Police get the camera footage from the hotel, more specifically from the hotel elevator, where they see the morning after their date, Jesse is in the elevator. He makes eye contact with the camera at one point at 8 in the morning, but he told police that he was asleep and hungover until like 9 or 10. He's seen leaving at 8 in the morning and then he comes back with his suitcase. So the cops are like, hey, you said you woke up at 10, but actually you left at 8 and came back with a suitcase. Why did you do that? And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I must have. And it's like, the suitcase is upstairs, though. You can go look at it. There's nothing in there. You can go look at the suitcase. And the cops are like, now they're suspicious, of course. They get a search warrant to search his hotel. And at first sight, it doesn't look like anything is out of the ordinary, but they bring in luminol, which they do that with the UV light, and they see luminol is shining all over the room. There is blood and footprints all over. December 8th, a Saturday, almost a week after Grace being missing, Jesse is now arrested on the suspicion of her murder. Now he thinks, I'm going to confess. And wait until you hear his confession. So Jesse talks about their date. They went to a burger place, got dinner and drinks. They went to a Mexican restaurant, got more drinks, then another bar, got more drinks. And there's camera footage of them at every single place. And the most eerie thing is that in the camera footage, they look like they're having the best time. I mean, Grace is all over him. They're so touchy-feely, hugging, kissing, which is also so sad because that meant that Grace felt so comfortable with him to be having that much fun and just enjoying herself the day before her birthday. To then find out what actually happened is devastating. They're seen going back to Jesse's hotel. He has his arm around her. They're holding hands. Like, it looks like it's going great. He says they get back to his hotel room and they start kissing, smooching. Grace brings up 50 Shades of Grey. She mentions how she's into the type of actions that are in 50 Shades of Grey, like kinky, aggressive, control, that kind of intimate activity. And this is, again, Jesse's story. And they are starting to get more and more into it. Grace asks him to bite her, and then he asks her to choke her. And then he says that they finish what they're doing. He then gets up, goes to the shower, falls asleep in the shower, and then comes back into bed and just goes to bed. Which, I'll just say this now, later in the trial, it comes out that when he went to the shower and fell asleep, he actually wasn't sleeping. He was looking up adult videos, if you know what I'm saying. So Jesse wakes up. He says that when he woke up, he thought that Grace actually left because he didn't see her, but then he sees her body on the floor or with blood coming out of her nose. He says he was in complete shock. He actually went to go dial 911, but then realized, oh, this probably will look bad on me, so he didn't dial 911. And once he realized that she was dead, he freaked out. He left at 8 in the morning, which is when he was seen in the elevator, which he says he was freaking out, but if you see the footage, which you should look up, he looks so weirdly calm. So he leaves, he comes back, he has rented a car, and has bought a suitcase. So he's seen going back in the elevator with a suitcase. He then tells the police that this is when he stuffed Grace's body in the suitcase. And he's talking about this as if it was really traumatizing for him. He says while he was shoving her body in the suitcase, he kept saying, "I'm sorry." He didn't say this, but we know this now from the camera footage the police ended up finding. But he also went to go buy a carpet cleaning machine. He stayed in his hotel room until around 6 in the morning, then left with 2 suitcases. He loaded the suitcases to his car. He went to go buy a shovel, then went to a car cleaning place, cleaned his car, then went to a dry cleaning place, got his clothes cleaned, and he was gone for around 3 hours, and then he was seen returning with a whole different outfit and no shoes. After he did his whole cleanup job, he is seen returning with 2 suitcases, which the cops were confused because they now know that in one of the suitcases he left with was Grace's body. So how come he's coming back with 2 suitcases? They ask him, and he says he actually bought another suitcase. So that's why he was offering to the cops, "Oh yeah, my suitcase is upstairs. You guys can look at it," because it was a brand new suitcase because he had already hidden the one with Grace's body. After confessing the real story, which who knows, because this guy is just such a liar. He lies about everything. But after saying that, he took the police to where he hid Grace's body, which was a wooded area around 20 miles out, and then he was finally arrested. In the trial, Jesse pleads not guilty. He's holding on to his story that it was a tragic accident. He's blaming Grace, saying she's the one who wanted it. She asked me to bite her. She asked me to choke her. It was an accident. It's not my fault that the choking led to that. And his lawyers are obviously backing him up, saying she wanted it. It's not his fault. Which, let me just say, the autopsy, her official cause of death was strangulation. And it takes between 5 to 10 minutes of constant strangulation to lead to death. It's not an accident. It's 5 to 10 minutes of obviously a lot of pressure to the neck for that to happen. That just, no. It later also comes out that he took pictures of Grace after she was dead. He took those pictures of her, and then he started Googling while he was in the shower falling asleep. He started Googling where he could hide her body. And then he also got on Tinder, scheduled another date to go the day after Grace died. So as Grace's body is in his hotel room, he goes on a date. The girl ends up saying that he was really weird, really creepy, and said very uncomfortable, weird things about how all day he was looking for a suitcase to put his sports gear in, telling her that his friends are police and the police are having a hard time finding missing people, but that you can't find someone's dead body if it's 4 feet underneath the ground. Like, just weird things like that. On the first date, the girl is like, "You were literally a weirdo. What are you doing?" And so creepy to think that I'm sure many of us have gone on dates and been like, "This guy's really weird," and then not thought about it. But like this girl went on a Tinder date, thought, "This guy's really weird. I'm not going to talk to him again." And then found out that actually during that date, he had a dead body of a girl that he took on a date in his hotel room. Like, just crazy. Anyway, he was found guilty and got life in prison with a minimum of 17 years. That is the heartbreaking story of Grace Mullane. So sad, so scary, and also just traumatic. I don't know. Be safe out there, my girls, and I love you all. Let me know what you think, and if you have any other suggestions.
Messages between Haley Beck and a different student. The student is 17 years old. Haley says, "I want to know how, they found out about it." Student says, "I don't know. I actually have no clue. I was just confused, to be honest." Haley said, did someone turn it in? Obviously, I mean, maybe a parent could, but, parents surely didn't. It's not something that they would do nor care about, honestly. Haley says Blank was supposed to stay, over the weekend until Sunday, until he went to California, but then he went yesterday, and a part of me feel like it has to do with this situation. She's referring to student A, while she's speaking to another student who is 17. The student responds and says, "It might be good, to be honest, not gonna lie." Haley says, "Yeah, no, she's got a whole husband and, 2 grown kids, so I don't know." Student responds, "Geez Louise, bro." Haley says, "He literally is, he didn't, he is just, the receiver of that, I don't know." He also says, "I think, yeah, I feel like he's dipping away from that kind of abruptly, kind of sus. If he just received them, I don't know." The other student said, "Hey, no, that's actually smart, to be honest. I think you're onto something. No, actually, huh?" Haley says, "Yeah, because he literally, it's the voice transcript, so bear with me." Haley says, Cause he literally was back for like one day, I'm pretty sure, and he was gonna come talk to the coaches at blank, but he didn't even do that. Like, I just want to know what went down for him to do it so abruptly and just be like, yep, I'm out. So says, because technically he's not even withdrawn from blank. He's pretended dropped, but he's like on the roster at other school, everything crazy. Student says, but nah, cops are at his house since yesterday, Thursday morning, I think, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, yeah. But I heard he was talking about doing this before camp, so I don't know. Haley says, no, he's definitely been set on California thing, but he's making it seem like he was going to be home this weekend. Then everything happened and was just like, okay, right now I'm out. Haley says, wait, how do you know cops? Wait, how do you know about the cops being at his house? Student says, because he told me. Haley said, did he talk to the cops? Like, what happened? What did he say? Spill. Student says, I have no clue. I just know the cops were at his house, actually. He didn't tell me, but blank told me cops were at his house. Haley says, that's weird. Like, I mean, maybe they tried to get a hold of him. They're just trying to ask him for questioning if she's got an open investigation. Maybe they're just trying to, I don't know. Student says, I don't know either, but it's actually crazy as fuck. Oh shit. Haley says, I mean, I hope he didn't do anything wrong. Like, I feel like if it was just a case of, hey, we know that this person sent you stuff, can you confirm, like, just questioning it, I feel like that wouldn't be a problem to him unless he did anything. Haley said, did she ever send you stuff? Like, I remember you saying, like, I'm not gonna say anything blank, but I swear, like, be so honest, because, like, I remember you saying that you had stuff from another teacher, but I remember trying to guess, just be honest. Clock that. She just said, I remember you saying that you had stuff from another teacher. So she just admitted to sending the 17-year-old stuff. It also says, also, can we like listen to my voice right now? After 2 days of teaching 7 hours straight, I think by the end of the semester I'm gonna lose my voice at least 3 times, especially soccer season. My throat hurts and my head hurts. Student says, no, she didn't. So there's a different teacher that's not her, that's not me, sending you stuff. Or sent you stuff, I guess. Like, you can be very honest with me. Like, I'm not gonna say literally anything to anybody. Like, I promise. The student says, nah, she did, but fuck, no one knows. No one could ever know. Like, I don't know. Haley says, that's the craziest part. So out of, like, between you and blank, obviously there's others. One of the others had to say something, like her own family did. So, like, did other people throw a blank name into there too, or something, I'm assuming? Student says, yeah, I don't know, but I was like, F, like, I was done. I stopped, you know? I know blank, like, the main one, so... Haley says, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I knew that she sent blank stuff. He told me at the end of this last semester, he had, like, videos or whatever. But for what he made it seem like, I was actually shocked. And, like, I have never, ever said that. Like, I have never told a soul because, like, a couple people's lives you're messing with. So I never said anything, but as far as I know from what he's saying, it was just him receiving them kind of thing, not doing anything about it. So I don't know how he's the main one. Haley says, and I know that apparently he said blank found out about her doing that. I'm not sure. He has no idea how she found out, and I have no idea how she found out about it at all. So she has that info. Who knows what she would have done with that. The student says, that bitch is crazy. That bitch is crazy. It's definitely her. Same with me. Nah, she's blank freaky. Mrs. Berlocka's a freak. Student says, she's crazy and blank. There's fucking Berlocka and fucking blank. Haley says, I don't know if she's still, like, anti-blank. I don't even know if they're together. I don't know. Who knows? But I don't know if she wanted to do something to get him in trouble. That's, like, something really evil, though. Student says, that bitch is evil and blank tried to break up with her. Haley says, yeah, but blank had her as a teacher and I feel like she liked her as far as I know, so I don't know. Student says, I don't know, bro. An evil world we live in. Haley said, but yeah, they literally left. That's the last time I heard from blank, is that they're on good terms because of the fact that she had a party and was throwing low blows all night like a bitch, basically. She went off crying and he followed her. He's like, I'm not gonna leave. Like, we can still, like, I'm not gonna end it. I'm so sorry, this is a voice transcription, so there's, like, a lot of random filler words. I'm, like, leaving, like, you're not gonna see me, and she's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry about everything, and falling back on everything. Student says, bro, that crazy bitch, she can switch up like this, bro. Haley says, I also feel like I don't know. It's handled through the police, and it's not even through the school, so unless she went straight to them. Student said, well, I mean, I don't know, because, this shit happened in spring, bro, with me and her. Haley said, like, listen, if I were to do any of that stuff, like, it's still extremely wrong, but so wrong. Don't get it twisted. Like, if I sent to multiple people, that is actually insane. But, like, for her who is 50 years old with a husband and kid, that's so wrong. Student says, nah, that shit's crazy. With you and me, it's different. Different because look at me. It's different. I turn 18 soon. Nah, she's OB crazy. Haley says, no, it's not even about that. It's like the fact, I mean, again, I'm not saying this to rationalize it, but I'm like in my 20s single with no kids. Again, that does not make it okay for me to be freaky if I was gonna do that, even just to you. I just don't know, that's why. That's why I'm weird about it for so many reasons, obviously, but yeah, that's why she's interesting. That's why it explains blank's videos, blank fuck. Student says, yeah, I know why. Like, just don't get me wrong, I understand. Like, obviously, I do know why, but like, it's fine if you do that. Like, everything with me, I'm just chill. No one knows about me, really. Haley said, yeah, but like, obviously, people found out about stuff that was on the DL with other people. So, like, how did that come to be? Like, that's what's so scary about even talking sometimes. Like, how did that happen? Student says, yeah, but like, but I don't have the need to do that. I'm not talking to nobody. Like, I'm literally just by my own self. So, but like, I'm a really sentimental person. I hate her. I hate doing people bad, like doing people raw. Like, I don't know, but it's just, I don't like it. Haley said, so you're saying I'm safe with you because you're a sentimental person. You don't want to do bad things to a good person like me. Is that what you're saying? He says, yes, literally, nah, but maybe. I was thinking that maybe her husband found out. Haley says, yeah, dude, like, I don't know. That would be crazy for him to turn her in like that. I don't know. I asked my own little cop guy friend and he hasn't responded yet because he's sleeping, so I'll see what he says. Conversation continues, and then the police noted that Haley and Blank indicate a possible relationship between them. Noted this is not student A, this is another student who is 17. Student says, what about hoes? I'm talking about, do I know any of the girls? Haley said, I don't know who you know, so I can't answer that. Why do you care about the other girls in class when you have me there? Duh. Student says, oh, yeah, I forgot. My fault. I'm sorry. Haley says, lol, I'm kidding, kind of. Nah, like, you won't even care about the other girls in there because, like, I'm so chill. Student says, yeah, I just won't be able to keep my eyes off of you. It's going to be so hard, just going to be so focused in that class. Haley says, right. I'm glad. I'm glad you can prepare yourself. Yeah, hopefully you stay focused, but don't get too distracted either, you know. Just make sure you want to talk to me the entire class, not actually do work, but hoping to keep your good student standards in my class. Or like, also can't get jealous when I show other people attention because that's like my job. Student says, ugh, it's gonna be so hard for me to do that. I just can't see you talk to another guy. Like, oh my god. Haley says, no, I've actually heard that before from somebody, actually a couple people, like being dead serious. When I was talking to other students in particular, they got a little jealous apparently. What the fuck does that mean?
A lot of people have been asking me why I'm not really talking about the Nancy Guthrie case anymore. And this is my simple answer. And it's probably going to piss some people off, but it's just my opinion. I 100% do not believe that she's alive anymore. And honestly, I don't think she's been alive since the night she was taken. And I have several reasons for thinking that. One, as we know, she is an 84-year-old elderly woman who has health problems that she's supposed to be on medications for. And if there's one thing that Sheriff Nanos has said that I completely agree with, it's that Nancy not taking her medications is critical to her life. And she's now gone over 20 days without taking them. Now, I obviously don't know what medication she's on, but I do know she has a pacemaker, which signifies that she has a cardiac arrhythmia. So she may or may not be on an antiarrhythmic medication along with the pacemaker. We know that she has high blood pressure, so she's supposed to be taking antihypertensives that she's not getting. So God only knows how high her pressure is, right? Which will increase her risk of stroke and can damage your kidneys. Having uncontrolled blood pressure can do all kinds of things to your body. We know that she's on a blood thinner. You can tell that just by looking at her. And not taking a blood thinner significantly increases your risk of clots, strokes, and even death. Two, the ransom notes. They don't make any damn sense at all. So Nancy was taken, I believe, around 2:30 in the morning on February 1st. And the first ransom note didn't get sent out until February 2nd to a local news station. And then I think TMZ got one the day after that. In typical kidnapping cases that involve a ransom, the notes are usually sent out on that same day, even within hours, and almost always to the direct family or a representative of the family, not to the media. You don't want to involve the media because you don't want it to be this huge thing. The goal is to keep it quiet and do it as quickly as possible. I would think if this was a true kidnapping for ransom case, the kidnapper would have contacted the family before it was even discovered that she was missing from church and been like, hey, I have your mother. this is what's going to happen. I have a Bitcoin address set up. You are going to send $6 million in Bitcoin to this address. I will send you proof of life. I'll do whatever I need to do. Do not call the police. Do not involve the FBI. Don't post about it on social media. You keep this quiet and let's get this done. Send me the money and I'll drop your mom off in the desert at this location. You can go pick her up and everybody can have a good day. But no, these ransom notes are getting sent to very large media outlets like TMZ. They got their first one on February 3rd with a demand for $6 million in Bitcoin with a deadline that was not met. So what do? They made a different demand with a different deadline. And Savannah and her siblings have asked for proof of life, which is standard, but they're not able to give it to them because I don't believe that they ever had her. What they did instead was send TMZ another note on the 5th and say, oh, she's alive, but she's scared. And she's aware of our demands and the fact that you're not paying them. It's like they tried to manipulate them like, oh, well, how could you do this to your mom? She knows you're not sending the money. And then there was the one on the 13th from somebody else saying, hey, I know who the kidnapper is. Send me this money and I'll tell you who they are. And that person said, this is going to be my last note. But then they sent another one. And I think on that one, they said, this is going to be my last note. Like, come on. Like, these people haven't figured out by now that if any ransom money was going to be sent, it would have been sent a long time ago when there actually might have been more of a belief that she was still alive. They're clearly not getting the money. So you would think if this person actually had Nancy, then at this point they'd be like, well, shit, we kidnapped her for nothing. So what are we going to do? We can't just house this woman for the rest of her life. We need to A, unalive her, or B, take her and drop her off somewhere so she can be found. They're not just going to hold her captive in hopes that maybe one day they'll get some money. And if these alleged abductors had Nancy, then every day that goes by is one more day that they risk being caught. They're just not going to do that. Like I said, it's already been over 20 days. I think we've all seen in movies where somebody's been kidnapped and they're in a room, with like a blindfold and the kidnapper will bring in meals, and stuff. But I really don't see that happening in this case. And like I said, Nancy is an elderly woman with very critical medications that it's been over 3 weeks now that she's gone without. So even if they didn't unalive her, I really worry what could have happened to her naturally just as a result of not having her meds. Now, of course, I really, really, really hope that I'm wrong, but I've been doing true crime for a long time. And in addition to that, I'm a cardiac nurse with 14 years of experience. So I honestly just don't believe she's alive. We've seen a lot of surveillance videos from that area of random people trying to break into houses and stuff. So I'm wondering if it wasn't a break in and maybe Nancy woke up and saw them. And so they were like, shit, I got to get rid of her. I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows, but that's just my own personal belief.